You're listening to audio from the Decidedly podcast. For more information, find us on Instagram at Decidedly Podcast.
So are you going to get your money back on that Toyota that you got?
No, I'm not going to get my money back on my Toyota. I just have to replace it. It's a fuel pump issue. It's not a big deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well,
that's what
I'm hoping.
Big deal. It seemed like a big deal when we were stuck in the rain trying to push you off the side of the road.
I do appreciate you coming to my rescue. It never fails when you buy an old car like that. There's some reason somebody's selling. What?
It's what, a 72?
A 73. So it's almost 50 years old.
73 what? What is it?
It's a 73 Toyota Land Cruiser FJ40. It's been fully restored, but it's one of those things that it was undercover in storage. It's in great condition, but just hadn't been running in a while. So I got to find out what didn't work the hard way. In the freezing rain, the fuel pump went out. So
yeah, that was pretty brutal.
That was brutal. So I had my first car that I got when I was 16. It was a 68 Scout. Piece of junk. And it was a $900 car at the time. And I wish I had that car now. It'd be worth much more. But I remember my driving experience in this car. It was such a piece of junk that when you would go down the highway or go down the road, if you hit a hole or a bump or something, just all the electronics would go out. Which is just the headlights. And so I would try and hit another pothole and knock them back on.
Oh man, that's
and it had holes. It had holes in the floorboard that you could actually see the street go by as you're driving. So I've had, however bad a car you think you've had, this one was worse.
It sounds pretty bad. Was that with the old mailman truck that you used to tell me about?
Yeah. The steering wheel was on the right hand side. It was right hand drive. So I would back through the drive-throughs.
That's
back
funny.
through. It was challenging.
That's funny. I think that you really haven't lived unless your first car was on the edge of imploding every time you turned it on. That's the way of the American male.
It is. I remember what all my buddies drove when we got our first cars. I remember what everybody had. They were all cars we wish we had now. They were just old cars then, but they're classics now.
Well, you've got like a collection going at your house.
Well, you got to collect something.
So what do you have? You've got that Highlander Land Cruiser?
No, it's a 65 Land Rover Series 2, which is it's sort of Britain's answer to the Jeep.
Okay.
And then of a 47 Willys, which is the predecessor to the Jeep. It's kind of an army, World War II army looking thing. And then the 73 Toyota Land Cruiser that is actually that was actually a drivable car. The other ones go about 40 miles an hour. That's about 40 miles an hour downhill with the wind at my back.
Yeah.
It's about top speed on those other ones.
Well, not to brag, but I do have a beat up used sedan with a torn leather seat.
Well, your first car was the pickup truck? Was that
I had an old green Jeep Wrangler.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was your first. Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, it was
without the hard top. It has soft top.
It was probably pretty similar in performance to the antique cars that you have.
I remember when we sold that. It didn't go over
45 without me risking my life.
That car had some problems.
Mm-hmm.
That car had some problems. I remember when I would drive it, it would just kind of shift around on you.
Yeah, it just kind of always felt like the roads were icy, even if it was July and
the chassis would kind of shift around from the tires, it would seem. Would feel like it.
It made it exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
Well, speaking of cars, today we are talking to someone who knows far more about cars than I do. I'm talking to Joe Chura. Joe Chura grew up in Southside Chicago. He's a young father, assembly line worker, and in between building cars, he found time to study. Took 5 years to graduate college, and then created a few companies and started his journey as an entrepreneur. He created and founded Dealer Inspire Inc. and was their CEO until he sold that company to Cars.com. And now he is the Chief Innovation Officer at Cars.com. Since that shift in his life, Joe has focused a lot of his energy onto spreading a motivating message to other people about wellness, health, and living for something greater than themselves. So I hope that you learn a thing or two from our conversation with Joe. I know that I had a great time. My name is Sanger Smith with Sean Smith. This is Decidedly.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, Joe. Thank you for being here.
So do you think, can you help me sell my car? I heard you're the guy.
Possibly. I can provide great outlets for you to sell your car.
Okay. all I hear is that right now the used car market's insane, and that you'd be best to walk to work every day and pocket all the money from selling your used car.
Yeah, the beauty about this space is it changes very quickly, and it's changing right now. So the market's shifting. Wholesale's part of the business that's a good indicator on what's happening, and that lags behind about 60 days retail. So what we're seeing is the market completely is flipping, that the used car valuations are going down. So I guess the short way of saying this is if you hold off a little bit longer, I think you'll be in good shape.
Okay, nice. So sell it now and then buy a new car 2 months from now. Okay, perfect. Thank you for the financial advice.
So I am really interested in that. So you had Dealer Inspired, sold that to Cars.com back, what is it, 4 years ago or so?
4 years ago to this day. It's our anniversary.
Really? Oh, wow. Yeah. So one of the things that we want to do on this podcast is to really just talk with people from a lot of different walks of life, interesting people that have made challenging decisions, and really pull that collective wisdom in to help with people with their decision making. And so I'm sure there were decisions you had to make in selling that business. What were the most challenging decisions you had to make when you were selling to Cars.com? Because that was a pretty big transaction, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was. And it was a tough decision, but the reality of it was the business was growing, and I had bootstrapped the business primarily. We had one investor that gave us a convertible loan, essentially. And it was fairly nominal. It was right when we first started in 2013. And at the time I had 3 employees, and that business was growing, but it was one of those that we needed to sustain the cash flow. I didn't really want to get other investors, and one of the things that isn't obvious is when you're growing a business, like, cash flow is super important. And I mean not obvious because when someone sees the business growing, like, they automatically assume, oh, the business is doing well, they don't need investment, or things like that. But it was quite the opposite for us, where we were able to run it very effectively, never really took out any debt. But then in 2016-ish, our clientele started to change from retail to enterprise, meaning we were working direct deals with OEMs, and our client base was shifting. Then our economics shifted as well. So whereas that was a great thing for the business, cash was delayed, bigger deals on the table, of course, and a lot of things were happening. So I decided at that point in time, like, I could do one of two things. I could try to get an investment, or I can explore options for a partnership or sale.
So how do you go about that walk us through, because not everyone's taken a company from the ground floor to sold by a major corporation. there's got to be a lot of decisions that go into that process to determine, number one, that that's even the route that you're wanting to take that company.
Yeah, so I think for me it was it really was playing things out. So I could have done two things. One, I could have gotten an investment from a VC or PE. I had probably 50 or 60 people that were soliciting us to try and see if there was something there. Or I could have looked to sell to a strategic partner, like what happened with Cars.com. And it happened very organically. At the time, to be honest with you, I didn't know what was the best choice. But what happened was, in parallel, I was trying to understand the value of our company, and I looked at my peer set and I looked at others in the market. And I could guess it, but at the same time, I wasn't 100%. So I went to an investment banker. They were performing this valuation, and at the same time, Cars.com reached out because we were ranked on certain lists, like Crane's Fast 50 is a Chicago-based list, and we were number 5 in the fastest growing companies. And not to complicate matters, but I had created 2 companies, and the company that was on the list wasn't even the company we're talking about. It was Launch Digital Marketing, which is the first company I created. So when Cars ended up buying both companies, Cars ended up buying both companies and not one. But essentially what it came down to for me was I needed to, I really needed to do something. I couldn't cash flow myself, any payroll, anything that was happening, I was able to cash flow within the business. But if something were to happen, like if an enterprise client didn't pay us, or if bills came up, which they often did, the business was growing at such a rate that I really needed a source of additional capital, and that source can only come in a few different ways. So that's essentially what happened.
Yeah. So dealing with, it sounds like you guys had really tight cash flow, and that was kind of the only option that you had to get that funding. I can empathize with what you're saying. When businesses are growing, I think from the outside looking in, it's really easy to say, oh, everything's working well. They've got all the money that they need. What problems could you have when you've got 200% growth?
Yeah. And I mean, to put in perspective, in 2013, we lost $300,000. And in 2017, we were ranked in the number 37 of the fastest growing companies in America. We were, and when we sold, we were, roughly around $25 million plus annual SaaS company with, growing at multiples on a yearly basis. So it was a lot really quickly. And our peer set, there wasn't really anyone to follow because most of our peers had been in doing what we've done for a decade plus.
So how did you decide that Cars.com was the right partner for that transaction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a few things happened, one of which was there wasn't the strategic alternatives at the time to me were ones in which I really needed to look past the deal itself and say, is this sustainable for our business and our business model? And a few things surfaced that I thought would be really important, one of which was audience. So if you guys are familiar with the tech space, a lot of privacy has come out with browsers and how they exchange information on people and whatnot. And some of our revenue was driven from ad tech and from marketing and advertising. So what I saw as writing on the wall was the first party audience data, and Cars.com had significant first party audience data. They had been in the business for 20 plus years, curating, collecting from editorial to the amount of vehicles that they have on their website to everything. They were getting about 26 million unique visitors on a monthly basis. So when I looked at future-proofing our business and our software and what we were doing for our clients and how it could benefit our clients the best, Cars.com was an obvious choice for that matter. The second thing that I looked at is, is there a right culture fit? They happened to be in Chicago, which was like 35 miles from our office. So that was number 2. And then 3 was, are they going to let us continue to run our business? Now, a lot of people say they will, but many times that doesn't happen. And I knew that if I would have chose the kind of PE or VC route, it would be how fast can we grow within 5 years and try and sell off the business. At least that was my perception at the time. And Cars.com would allow us the ability to do more synergistic product development with their platform, use their audience, and really do a lot more than we could otherwise on our own.
The VC route or the private equity route they've got a lot less incentive to be patient with you.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't, I was confident in the business, but at the same time, and part of this was also I've seen the one investor we had was a fantastic person, great friend. But what I was looking for is like, who can add value, who can add fuel to this fire versus like, who's just going to give us a check? Because I knew that in the right hands and with the right alignment, it could be a lot more than it is. And I was right, because 4 years later, we've since quadrupled the business. Dealer Inspire is over 800 employees. We are certified with almost every single automobile manufacturer in the U.S. and Canada. There's a few, a few or not, but for the most part, it's the partnership has paid its dividends, and it's accomplished almost exactly what I thought it would.
So you're still involved with the day-to-day?
I am not really involved in the day-to-day. I was CEO up until this year, and I recently took a position as the Chief Innovation Officer for Cars. So whereas I had really 800 people under my organization just a couple months ago, now I have zero, and I get to focus on innovation, but I also get to focus on other passion projects outside of automotive. I'm creating a few other companies right now, and it's been a lot of fun to recreate what worked for Dealer Inspire back then.
So what do you do as the chief innovation person? That sounds like a fun job. That sounds like a job I want. Chief innovation.
Yeah. Well, we're figuring it out right now, honestly. But one of the things that I'm focused on is acquisitions, is M&A. We've acquired 2 companies in the last 4 months that I've been working on for the last year. I'm focused on what's the future look like for cars and our ecosystem and our clients. How do we help our clients the best with the products and services that we offer? Essentially, like, it's my job to think beyond the day-to-day, beyond the next 6 months, and really think about how to make Cars a long-standing brand in our space, which we have all the tools and we have all the assets to make that a reality. But it's really cool to have the manpower and the brain power to focus on that as a business.
How much time do you spend on that versus the other stuff you're doing?
I would say a good part of my day is still focused on it, and part of it is we're trying to figure out the right rhythm and the right cadence of things. And of course, I couldn't shut off everything I was doing overnight. But it's one of the greatest gifts too. I have to say is looking back, and one of the big takeaways hopefully from this conversation is success is, to me, initially it was about building a business and having employees and having that business grow. And then it really became, to me, a shift of like, can this business grow without me? And initially, as a CEO and a founder of a company, it's all about you, right? It's all about your ego. You have to be in meetings. You have to be the product guy. And then I was like, you know what? That's just not a good definition of something that I want. So I really shifted my focus to, I need to build a team to survive as if I'm not there. And that's what I wanted to focus on. So I guess that's my way of saying that the business right now without me is thriving, and it's not only surviving, it's thriving. It's doing really well. And to look at the 800 people in my organization and the leaders that worked under me, and to see them step up is just probably the greatest honor of anything that I've had in the past several years since the acquisition.
I could be completely wrong on this, because obviously I've not built a business to the point where I'm able to step away and have it completely run itself. But it seems like that's a natural progression of the highly motivated, highly ambitious entrepreneur to want to make it all about you, and then realize, wait, the next level is after this. Like, I grew up seeing Sean get to a place where he was able to take the entire summer off from work. And that was a big monumental stage to say, hey, if I can take 3 months off consecutively and not check my email, obviously this is a business that's at least doing a decent job of running in my absence. Otherwise, it's going to fall apart. And I know business owners to this day that they feel like they can't take, a 2-hour lunch break without having things fall apart.
Yeah, no, it's so right on. And Sean, I commend you for doing that and leading by example there, because the definition of this changes over time, right? And it's of your perception. And when you're young and you're hungry, again, it's just about like, hey, can I even create a company? Can I get revenue? Can I get employees? And then once that starts growing, it's just like the measurement of this changes over time significantly.
Yeah, I think you go from, when you first start out, and I think when you first start out, a lot of the businesses are about you, right? Because it's just you working it, or just one or two people. And you get through this survival phase. Are we going to make it? Can I make payroll? Is this going to really be working? And then you get to this sort of maintenance part where you're like, okay, I think I can make it. I think, we're going to be okay. And then you sort of move up and say, all right, this can actually be really successful. And then from there, you get to sort of that enduring business that you talked about something that lasts beyond you. And it's sort of that moving to significance part of the wealth. Did you find that transition as you kind of move through business?
Yeah, I think it was one of these where I thought success was way different. Like initially, I thought I would look at myself and say, and put a stamp on myself. Like once I sold the business, I mean, we were this, I think the first or second largest tech transaction in 2018. So I looked at that, I was like, wow, I built these companies from nothing and created this. And after the transaction, really quickly, like that feeling waned off. And then my transition became, okay, how do I be what I consider the anomaly in our space and stick with this and make this company, again, thrive, not only survive, but thrive, for the coming years. And I'm proud to say that I stuck by that decision, and I stood by to really try to build up our team. And that transition it's interesting, because you have to put your ego aside on things for sure. And you have to establish patience and be more present. And you have to develop different skills. When you're an entrepreneur and you're going at it, like you can just be a bulldog and you can make things happen. Well, when you're a leader leading a large team, you can't operate the same way. So it's definitely one of the most challenging things, but it was probably the most rewarding, like I said, watching other people grow their careers.
It seems like the natural, not natural is the wrong word, but a common outcome for people who have attained a level of significance or a level of success and realize that success at that point is no longer defined by what it was when they started. I read on your website the story of you running that marathon, seeing the sign.
Yeah.
It says not there, right? Or I'm butchering the language. Not almost there. Yeah. Right. So I feel like a lot of people who have achieved something significant get to the top of the mountain and go, whatever. It wasn't that cool. And people can do that whether they've sold a large company or finished, climbed Mount Everest, or they just retired. A simple, normal, average American life, and they got to 65 and said, okay, I'm done working. Either way, we all have that mountain, and a lot of people can get to the end of it and go, oh man, this wasn't nearly as fulfilling as I thought. And at least what I think is that next step of realizing what success could be is to change our thinking from seeking success and shift that to seeking significance. And the only way to really achieve significance is to do something for others, whether that's the people we're responsible for leading, our employees, our family, our children, our community. And the good news, I guess, is that there's so much more to do for others than we ever could do for ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And that's the key to all of this, right? To the key to life. And you guys are figuring this out. And Sean, I'm sure you have experience with this, but it's when you can give to other people, you get so much more in return. And that could be a career, that could be giving as far as just helping others that are in need. And I spend a lot of my time doing that and thinking about that. Because, one thing is, not only can you make an impact on someone's life, but it also gives yourself a different sense of purpose.
I think you're exactly right. I have found when I sold my business, and it wasn't near what you did, but I sold my business a few years ago, and as a financial advisor, I'd seen a lot of people go from working to not working, sort of, but in many cases they didn't have something that they were retiring to. And they hadn't figured that out yet. They just knew that they wanted to leave something behind, and they didn't have that next goal. They didn't have that next Mount Everest that they were going to climb, like you were talking about, Sanger. And so what happened was they ended up sort of reverting back to where they were. I talked to them 6-9 months later, and they're doing contract work for the company they retired from that they couldn't wait to leave, 2 years ago. And so I think it's super important to figure out what is that next thing that you're wanting to accomplish. What is that next thing that you're wanting to do?
Yeah.
And I think you can only move to significance when you're giving things away. You can have a lot of wealth, but it's never going to be significant if you're not making philanthropic contributions. Your talents are not going to become significant unless you're demonstrating them. Your time's not significant unless you're giving to people that you care about or need your assistance.
Yeah, no, I think that's right on. And one of the scariest things that you think about is, okay, well, what if I just stepped away from these companies that you've built? It's hard for others to imagine, but when you've created something, you've interviewed your first 150 employees, you've built out the offices literally like with your own hands, and then that company grows and you sell it. It's just this weird feeling. It's just like, like technically you don't own it, but I wanted to, and Cars.com did a great job making me feel like I still had ownership and I had decision-making power and I had all that. But the thought at that point in time of just like walking away from everything was just really tough, especially since I've been in the industry that I'm in for the last couple of decades. So one of the things that I wanted to do and what I've learned from others is just start something, start creating your own luck by doing something else that interests you and see where that goes. And that led me to what's going to be my next venture. But that led me to create the Not Almost There podcast. That led me there from that podcast to then think about, okay, what is it that I want to do to then take everything I've learned and apply it to a new industry and a new business.
You talk about the second chapter in your life. What do you think was the biggest or most important decision in identifying that second chapter? Because you could have done anything, right? You sell a company, especially getting the amount of the size of check you got, you could have done anything, right? And a lot of people, not entrepreneurs who sell their business, but I think a lot of people when they think about reaching that end of the mountain, there's there could be a lot of bad decisions that are made. But what do you think was the most impactful decision or important decision that you had to make in order to make that a worthwhile transitionary period?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to what I said a minute ago, is by starting something new and really diving into just creating. So just to back up a second there, I created this event called Refuel, which was made for my employees in 2017. It has since grown, and we have it every year, and we have great speakers on like Jocko Willink and David Goggins and these motivational speakers. It has nothing to do with our space at all, meaning it's nothing to do with automotive whatsoever. It has a lot to do with just motivation and people to get influence and get passion from other folks that have done amazing things in their lives. So I would have this event on a yearly basis, but what happened was the event would end, and then for the next year, nothing would happen. So I decided to create this podcast called Not Almost There, as you mentioned earlier. That decision to do that was really scary because you guys are great hosts. You ask great questions, right? But it's an art, and you've learned a lot over time, I'm sure. And to jump in there and to create a podcast to me was just a thing that I was uneasy about. And by doing that, that led me to realize that my passion was really in health and wellness and understanding mental mindset. And that then there led me to think about what my next venture is, which is to create a non-alcoholic brewery, which piggybacks on the health and wellness and mindset of everything, to give people an outlet to go and enjoy, but not have a sacrifice or not sacrificing their weekends or having alcohol or being hungover, and allowing them to have a social experience that doesn't compromise all those other things that alcohol can do.
Oh man. So have you started that yet or no?
Yeah, it's called Go Brewing. It opens in July in the Naperville area. We're the first non-alcoholic tap room in Illinois, among the first in the nation. That's just going to be dedicated to non-alcoholic beer. We're going to have events there, and then it's going to go from there to regional and then direct to consumer, hopefully by the end of this year.
Oh man, I'm getting on the mailing list. I stopped drinking a couple of years ago, and I think maybe I've had like 2 glasses of wine since then and a sip of beer. But it was kind of the same type of decision, I guess, that you're describing. Is I just realized this isn't really that healthy, and I don't really enjoy it that much anyway. But man, beer tastes so good, and non-alcoholic beer tastes awesome. I used to make fun of people for drinking like O'Doul's, right? Why would you drink that? And now, give me like a non-alcoholic IPA. Oh, that's a great deal.
Yeah,
right
no,
there.
totally.
Do you drink a non-alcoholic beer, Singer?
When you can find it, you can't find it.
I think this is a niche, because I don't see it other than O'Doul's. I don't see it on tap anywhere like you're talking about.
It's not really on, even O'Doul's, it's not really on tap. So like to have a tap room in itself is, again, like there's a few out there, but they're not popular yet. But I do believe that this is a trend that people are finding, that alcohol is poison essentially. And that's, I'm not teetotaling. I still drink, and I love draft beer, but at the same time, I realize that you can't do that a lot anymore, especially as you age, and it's just not.
Well, socially, it's so hard to not drink too, because everybody else when you're drinking wants you to drink with them, right? Nobody. If you're just sitting there, Joe, with a glass of water, and all your buddies have beer. Most of the time, come on, man, come on. And they're not even trying to be, it's not the malicious peer pressure that your mom warned you about when you were 14. It's friendly. They just want you to let loose and have a good time. And I think when people see that you're not drinking, they think that means that you're not having fun. And so I started to like disguise my drinks so that it looked like I was drinking. So I'd get like tonic water with a lime in it in like a small glass. And it looks like a vodka soda, but it's just Topo Chico. And as soon as I started doing that, people would leave me alone. Or if I could get like a non-alcoholic beer, it's like nobody,
I have done that. I've gotten iced tea in a highball glass just so people leave me alone sometimes. And because I've had that same experience. And shots are the worst. Guys that do shots are the worst. You have to participate. It's a communal thing.
A lot of friends like that, but like an example you're talking about here is like I went out to dinner with my wife, and we're looking forward to this dinner. It's Saturday night, and we make the reservations for 5:30, and get a babysitter, and the babysitter gets her at 5, and it's 6:45. We're staring at each other, and we're like, "What do you want to do now? Dinner's over. The babysitter doesn't want to come back if I pay her for 2 hours, so we got to go somewhere." And where's there to go? Like there's. I guess we could go bowling or do something like that, but there's not a lot of options. So most of the options revolve around alcohol consumption. So we're like, man, just imagine if you had this non-alcoholic brewery with events there, live music and everything like that, that you don't compromise.
I love that idea so much. Because I think people kind of start to, because of the entanglement of alcohol with the normal American social life, there's a lot of activities that we perceive to be revolving around drinking, but don't have to be revolving around drinking. Like, playing yard games, playing cornhole. I was sitting out, eating at a barbecue restaurant. They had damn professional cornhole on the TV. But that seems like an activity that you wouldn't do unless you were drunk.
Yeah, that's so right on. But I mean, and the reality is now with cannabis becoming legalized, people are finding other ways to get their buzz on. They don't want to do that, and then also have alcohol. And in many ways, alcohol is worse for you. You don't have the kind of side effects the next day. So I hear of cannabis consumption. But I mean, kind of going back to what you talked about, and I think what people get fearful of starting something. And by me starting that podcast, it created a path to figure out, okay, what's this next thing? Because I had an event from the podcast called Go. And then I'm like, I didn't want to have alcohol at this event. So I reached out to some non-alcoholic beer providers. They gave me some beer. I was handing out the beer and I'm like, why don't I brew my own beer? And then that started this idea that became a reality.
That's cool. Yeah. I like that.
That's really exciting.
Are you still running?
Yeah.
You still doing marathons?
I did a Spartan Ultra in September, and now I'm training for a jiu-jitsu tournament. So I try and do like 2 big physical athletic goals a year. And my thing last year was doing a Spartan Ultra race, which was 31 miles in the Tahoe Mountains. And it was pretty difficult. But
I did an ultra a few years ago and swore I would never do it again. That was my learning.
Well, the good thing about ultras is you don't need to be super fast. So,
I wasn't. I nailed that part of it.
Who do you train jiu-jitsu under?
Under Damian Maya. Yeah.
Oh, no way. Yeah, that's exciting. I train in Fort Worth under Travis Luter. So are you doing like an IBJJF in Chicago?
Yeah, in May, actually. So that's my goal is to, and when I initially did this in my mind, I was like, I just want to be able to enter a tournament. And then I'm like, what kind of goal is that? Like, I'm going to win the tournament. So it shifted to now training like 5-6 days a week. Like sometimes I go twice a day and really make that a priority. To accomplish things in your life, you have to make daily decisions about how you want to prioritize your time. That's the number one bit of advice I'll give anyone. And if there's no such thing as I don't have time, it just means you didn't prioritize it the way that was meaningful to you, because we all have time. It's just a matter of like what's important to us.
Yeah, the I don't have time or I didn't have time excuse is highly frustrating. I try to not say that when people ask me, oh, why didn't you come to the party, or why don't you come to running club or whatever. I really try to not say I don't have time. That's an easy, like, non-thoughtful response. The reality is I didn't go because I am focused on the company, or I didn't go to that family dinner because I'm training for this jiu-jitsu tournament, or whatever it is. And be precise with our language, I think, is really important.
I took the words like I'm busy out of my vocabulary and started changing it to it's been really active lately, because who doesn't say that they're busy when you talk to someone, right? Like, that's the thing. It's like, I just don't say it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't say that either. I started noticing that a lot of that it's sort of a lazy response that people say, hey, how you doing? Just, you're busy at work, busy. Yeah, I don't want to be busy. I don't know if some people just define their success by being busy, but I want to be purposeful. But you sound weird if you say that. How are you doing? I'm very purposeful. I'm not going to say it, but I just try not to say I'm busy.
Yeah, you started saying, I heard you say a couple of times, oh, it's been really productive.
I have said
lately.
that. Yeah, I do say that.
And I like that one. I try to think of that, if I'm inclined to say I'm busy right now, maybe I am busy. Maybe I am just filling my day with nothing to kind of fill the void. But if I can look back on each day or week or month and say, yeah, it was a really productive time, even if I worked a lot, that feels good.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you think about what your intention is by saying that. It makes you think about your day even. Like, if you say you're busy, you're like, what did I do today?
When you looked at your transition from business, owner to going to where you are now, where you're doing a lot of different things and no longer the primary owner, what would you say was the most difficult decision you had to make?
I think letting go to the fact that, like, I wasn't, I didn't have to be the guy anymore. And in some ways, when you're the CEO of a company that's growing, your name is always in the spotlight, especially in the industry news, industry publications and whatnot. And what happens is when you're not in the spotlight, you start to your ego doesn't get filled as much. And I had to be okay with that, because I was normally like the guy that's doing stuff. Now I'm not this. I'm the CEO of my company, but there's a CEO of the parent company, and I also had to be okay with, like, I didn't have, although I had some control, I didn't have all the control anymore to do really anything I wanted, to hire as fast as I wanted. There was processes in place, and I had to be okay with that. You could fight it, or you can say, okay, how do I learn from this new process? And it was tough. I mean, it is tough, especially when you're used to doing things. I think that's why a lot of folks, once they get acquired or, have a big event, they end up doing something else and moving on. But I also had to be okay with, like, okay, what's my passion? Is my passion being a CEO of an 800-person company, or is it starting something from scratch, from an idea? And I'll tell you, like, I'm just more drawn to that, like starting an idea from scratch, building something from nothing, seeing that to fruition, and seeing how it goes, and learning, but this time I'm trying to be very intentional about being present and not being stressed out about everything. Before, it was like stress everywhere, stress on cash flow, stress on build out, stress on employees, stress on clients. Now I'm just like, okay, like, I just have to understand that this is part of the journey, and this is a cool thing we're creating here. And why am I letting this be a stressful situation?
Yeah, that's a daily decision. It seems like a daily decision to let go, and also a daily decision to not be stressed out.
Yeah.
I mean, do you meditate? What do you do to kind of?
So I start my day off by working out. So I work out with my wife at 5:30 a.m. and that's something I do 5 days a week with her. And that starts the day off playing offense, what I like to call it. So you don't just wake up, roll out of bed, and you're just answering emails, and you're playing offense. You're controlling your day. You're not letting your day control you. So that to me is hugely important. Secondly, when you do have things that pop up, and I am far from perfect here, but I've gotten way better. I take a breath. And if it's something I have to react to immediately, I'll pause for a second. I'll think about it before it would just be a reaction. In any case where I can, if it's something that I am either unhappy about, or I have to provide something I'll get in a confrontation in, that's adversarial in any way, I'll give it a day and I'll sleep on it. And usually things happen during that time period, and that next conversation isn't nearly as bad. So that's.
Did you find that you were fairly confrontational when you were in that high stress environment?
I think I was very reactionary. I was very like, it was always like ready, fire, aim. And I'd figure it out, ready, fire, aim, figure it out. As long as I was going in the general direction, I was okay with that. But that caused more stress, that caused more issues than it needed to. And I've matured there over time. Again, it's like, things happen. And if something happens today, like I try to implement everything. And going back to meditation, I try to meditate on a daily basis as well, even if it's for a few minutes, to try and just really be present. And that's been important as well.
We were talking like we had a Shiley Bassnett on the podcast a few weeks ago. She climbed Mount Everest. She led the first all-woman team of climbers to climb Mount Everest. Anyway, we were talking about meditating, and Sean was advocating against it. Is that right? He was saying it's stupid and pointless.
I just had a lot of questions about it. She's Buddhist, and she was really good at meditating and getting to that spiritual space. And one of the things that I've noticed is that people who are highly successful tend to have a morning ritual. I don't know why that is, but it's probably more common in highly successful individuals than it is in people who aren't.
And it's something that I've grown to love. And the first few years of growing the business, I was 250 pounds. I had eczema, just like didn't care about anything except growing the business. I wasn't present with my family. And then when I realized that I was being a horrible role model, I started, I had a gym in my basement that I never even used. And then I found my friction point. I solved for that, and that allowed us to create a routine that we've stuck with for the last 5 years, and it's been life changing to be able to do that in the morning, because that leads to other things. And then now it's like, if I don't work out twice a day, I feel guilty. I know that sounds crazy, but like, yeah, and it doesn't have to be like an intense hard workout, but just being active, especially if you're behind your computer all day long. I really, like, if I'm not doing that at least twice a day, then I'm feeling like there's something missing.
I think it's really easy with our modern lifestyles to justify not being healthy. It's so easy to not be healthy. It's so easy to just roll out of bed and immediately I can work with my head still on my pillow. I can be answering emails, whatever it is, right from our phone. You can drive through McDonald's, takes no effort, and it's not that expensive. Everything that's unhealthy is easy, comfortable, and cheap.
Yeah, and one thing, I don't know if you guys listen to Jim Quick at all. He was just a guest at my last Refuel conference, but he has a great book out, and he's a great podcaster and someone you guys should know if you don't. But one of the things he says is, the harder you work now, the easier life will become. The easier you make life now, the harder life becomes. And if you just think about that, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, what happens if we do make those decisions on a daily basis to be lazy? Well, over time, it catches up to you. And one of the lessons that I've learned over time is there's this lagging effect in everything that you do, from not hiring the person today that you should hire to not doing the right thing in business. The immediate effects aren't necessarily always there, but there's this lagging effect that'll happen, and it changes depending on what it is. But if you make a decision today that I'm going to eat like crap and I'm going to drink a bunch of beer, and I make that decision all too often, well, in a few months from now, I'm going to be overweight and I'm not going to be healthy. The inverse can happen though. If you make small decisions on a daily basis and you do those over time, and this doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Think of the 80-20 rule. Then over time, you're going to see that lagging effect go in the positive direction. But the bottom line is you can't just like coast through life and then figure it out in your 60s. Like, you need to start taking action now. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot harder.
Yeah, I think either you pay the price of discipline or you pay the price of regret. So it's one or the other. You're paying a price either way.
Exactly.
So the podcast is great. I'm glad it's going well. The event that you put on, is that open to everybody or just cars.com people?
No, it's open to everyone. We had about 5,000 viewers live when it was on. You could find it on YouTube if you just Google Refuel 2021. It's posted live, and that was a blessing from COVID. I know COVID was really hard on a lot of us, but it made us rethink this event. And it was only an in-person event, and we expanded it to stream it for free. And again, you can find it there. Then Not Almost There's the podcast, and obviously that's free, and that's everywhere. The podcasts are just like yours.
Just like ours. Yeah. Hey, I appreciate your time being with us. This is it's always fascinating talking to people who've been successful in the things that they're doing, and more than that, people who have exciting things that they're planning to do and doing in the future. So you got a big future ahead of you, even with all the success. So thanks.
I'm a work in progress, and I'll make sure to send you guys some beer when we have it, cans and ready to go. Yes. Yeah, it's called Go Brewing. You can find more info on gobrewing.com. We're just working on the website now and a bunch of things for it, but we're excited about it.
My biggest takeaway from our conversation with Joe was that success is often poorly defined from the bottom of the mountain. And then once we reach the top of that mountain of what we define success as when we started our journey, it can typically be unfulfilling. And so finding ways to continue to strive for more, to continue to climb, to continue to grow requires a focus on significance. And I think we were able to more articulately define significance. And that's really focused around being important to other people.
Yeah, mine were several. We had a really wide-ranging discussion with him, and I had a few learnings from it. One was to, as somebody who sold their business about the same time that I did, he mentioned being comfortable not being the guy, which I think is super important. but also figuring out what that next thing is. What is it, kind of what you were saying, figuring out where is it that you're wanting to go from there? What are you trying to produce, create, distribute, give away? How are you becoming significant and creating significance by giving value out? The other is the daily decision on how to prioritize time. Just being conscious of the prioritization decision on time, and having an awareness that you are having to make decisions. And if you're not deciding to do anything, you're actually deciding to not do things. And so that was something that I kind of took away. So those are my learnings.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Decidedly. I hope you learned something. I know I did. If you thought our show was 5-star worthy, please check us out on iTunes and give us a 5-star review. It really helps out a lot, helps people find our community and defeat bad decision making in their own lives. Check us out at decidedlypodcast.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Decidedly Podcast. Until next time, I'm Sanger Smith with Sean Smith. This is Decidedly.
Insights, advice, and comments provided by Sean Smith, Sanger Smith, and speakers identified as part of the Decidedly podcast should not be considered recommendations. Speakers who are not identified as members of Decidedly are expressing their own opinion, and their statements should not be construed as reflecting the views of the Decidedly team. This podcast is produced solely for informational purposes, not personalized advice.